This is Bryce Klueh, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Yes, indeed. We're going to have a great time today. It's another Music Show Thursday. So let's just get caught up and talk about what you're up to and then what you're promoting, and we'll launch from there.
Awesome.
Sounds good, man.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing that we're talking about is Chris and Brian, who are the Cold Stares, have said, you know what, we're going to add a bassist to this band. That's big news for you guys, because one of the things you all are known for being a two-piece and then playing the fuck out of those two pieces where everybody's like, you got to be kidding me. You got like a whatever in your pocket, who's backstage or what's going on. But you guys did it with two people, and you've broken out and written some incredible stuff, multiple albums. You've been all over this show. So I guess we got to start with you, Chris. You added a bass player. How the hell did you pick Bryce, and why?
We had looked at bass players a couple times in the past, and we actually had a couple guys that were great players that came in, and it just didn't feel right. We had a couple guys come in and play in the studio before. One was Kurt Schneider, that plays with everybody from John Mayer to Five for Fighting, and so we've had some great players that came in and played in the past, but we were just kind of I think we were just kind of predispositioned to stay as a two-piece. And then this year when we went on tour in Europe, our record label Mascot was at a couple of the gigs, and they mentioned that if you hadn't seen us live before and you saw us the first time, that it's pretty crazy that we can make that much sound as a two-piece. But if you had heard the records before and you came out, that you might be a little disappointed that I wasn't playing any of the solos, and we weren't doing some of that other stuff. And after a few records, I was kind of at the point now where I was like, it'd be nice to introduce somebody else in the band, have something else going on anyway, just creative, just spark that creative flow. But Brian was still pretty much against it. But it was weird because the same night that she had mentioned that, Brian mentioned, he said he'd played a benefit gig that they did a bunch of Tom Petty stuff, and Bryce was the bass player, and he was talking about how great Bryce's feel was, and not only that, just how he was a cool guy and easy to get along with, and I was like, dude, I talked to the label first and had the label kind of pinch Brian as well and just say, hey, maybe you should try this, and we early on, I didn't play a lot of solos on the record, but the last couple of years I've really just further fell in love with guitar playing and wanted to play some more solos. And so I think we did kind of miss those. So Bryce was really the one-stop shop. We didn't really contemplate anybody else. We just reached out to him and asked him if he was interested in giving it a try. And, I think I'll let him further explain that. But the thing about Bryce was, also, other than just being a fantastic bass player, was he's local. We've been friends. We know his brother. We've ran in the same circles for years, and he's also available to tour. And he fit all the criteria. So it's just a perfect fit, really.
Yeah, there's a lot of criteria that goes into this situation. So Bryce, I'll ask you, what was it like musically, artistically, working into the situation that already existed that Chris and Brian had created?
Well, that was kind of the easy thing, was because, I had seen them around town for years. So I kind of knew the sound that they had and that they were creating already as a two-piece. And I knew kind of, once Chris reached out to me, I was just like, okay, I thought about it. We had a few days between when he reached out originally and then when we actually met up for the first time and discussed what he was kind of looking for. And so I had some time to kind of think about it. And I was thinking about shows that when I had seen them live here in town, and what they were going for. And so, like, I knew where I wanted to fit in. And it was basically, I wanted to make it feel like nothing had changed, that they hadn't added another person, sound wise, sonically, I didn't want to change any of that because they had a great sound already. I didn't need to come in and change any of that. I just needed to add to it. and make their load a little bit easier. And you know, when Chris and I and Brian first met, we met for lunch one day and kind of talked about it and went over things that they were looking for and a little more in depth. And the stuff I could add, you know, I could bring to it was easy, you know, or not necessarily easy. It was just exactly what I was anticipating before, I guess. You know, I had already expected that, you know, and that's what I was going to go for anyway. So, you know, that really came really easy and naturally, I thought.
Terrific. Chris, talk about Bryce's feel.
It's amazing, man. Like I said, we've played with some great bass players before, and not to discount any of those guys if they're watching. But the thing about Bryce is he listens so well. I mean, he literally came in and played the exact parts with the exact feel that I would have if I was sitting over on bass. And in the past, when we've been in the studio, I've always played the bass parts in the studio, and I kind of have a feel for myself. But Bryce is a chameleon that he can come in and, you know, we were talking about in rehearsals the other day, he just matches my notes exactly as far as when I'm cued in and when I'm releasing notes. He does exceptionally well at listening and doing that. And that's very important to us, because one of the things was early on as a two-piece, everybody would say, well, you guys are so tight, you know. And I would say, well, we're of course we're tight because I'm playing everything. I was playing 2 guitar amps and a bass amp.
Yeah.
If I made a mistake on one, I made a mistake for all 3. You know, so it was tight, but it had that limitation of it only could be single notes, and it, you know, it was all on me. And Bryce stepped in and plays all the right notes that I need him to, that we need him to as a band. But then he also, you know, just has this great ear for adding stuff. The new stuff that we're working on for the next record, you know, I'm super excited about, because he's already adding notes that spark me to want to do other stuff. So he's doing exactly what we hope somebody could do if they came in.
Nice. Well, Bryce, what about the Cold Stairs excites you musically?
Oh, well, to go back when I first heard him, you know, probably what, I don't know, 10 years ago, maybe, Chris, I think.
Yeah.
You know, Chris's tone, you know, I was a bass player then. And so hearing the guitar and what he was doing with the bass and splitting the signals and stuff was super impressive. But really what caught my ear was Brian. Brian's drumming is just so stellar, and just, I love his placement of everything and just his feel and the groove. You know, he's got chops, but he doesn't have to show them off all the time. And so that was kind of what immediately drew me to the band. And then the more I watched Brian, then I saw how Chris interplayed with Brian. And that connection there just excited me, just as a fan in general, you know, and watching them two kind of interact, and then you know, thinking like, oh, hey, I could be a part of that. That really excited me. You know, I wanted to be a part of that, and just to add, not necessarily add anything, but just I don't know, do what I do. You know, like bring what I thought would be, you know, cool. Yeah, I guess it was kind of a dumb way to say it, but I mean, it's true. You know, I mean.
Well, let me stay on you for a second, because
Sure.
you kind of unlocked as a rhythm section player. Talk in some detail about what it is that Brian does that you lock into. Like when you're playing with a drummer and you go, okay, I can attach to this.
Yeah.
What is it that he does that you can lean into that makes you feel comfortable?
Man, the kick drum and hi-hats. That's the first thing I pay attention to is, you know, where's the kick at? Where the hi-hats at? You know, if it's a driving tune, you know, or the hats going 16th notes, 8th notes, whatever, you know. And then I find where the kicks lined up on that, and that's just, you know, it's gotten to a point where I don't really think about it. It's more of a feel thing, and it's just you know, that's just what Brian does. Like his kick is so big sounding, and it's so just, you know, right where
driving
right where you'd expect it would be, you know. And it's just perfect. And so that's just what I listen to for sure. And that's what drew me to Brian. You know, it was just like, oh yeah, of course, that's where that's at. Perfect. You know.
Yeah. Chris, being a unit with Brian, you know, you have a chemistry, and like you said, you stick and release notes the way that you do it. And then when you brought Bryce on, did you find the two of them in sync, or is it a beautiful alchemy that they put together? How do you react to the two of them playing together?
Well, it makes my job much easier. It was the glue that we needed, probably, because when it was just me and Brian, there, it just, the more pieces in the puzzle that you have in there, the easier it is to see the image. And when it was just Brian and I, a lot of times I was wondering if I was pushing, if I was pulling. People would say, God, you guys are incredibly tight. And probably we were, but when you don't have a bass in there, you don't have that bottom. A lot of times I'm playing more melodic things on the guitar, not necessarily rhythmic things that lock in with Brian. So I had to just kind of drop and rely on him to just kind of hold that underneath me. Well, now he has the additional glue of Bryce in there to hold those notes. So those kicks are not just kick notes; they're a kick on an E or a kick on a D that kind of puts that bed underneath me for me to be able to play. So I think it helps a lot. When we first all got together and tried it, I think the thing that Brian said after the first rehearsal was, I don't think it doesn't necessarily sound any bigger. It kind of sounds the same. I said, well, you do realize how huge a statement that is, that
Yeah.
it didn't sway, or it wasn't a fight, because every other, when we've had other players come in, a lot of times it was a fight, maybe because that person was trying to really, I don't know. Again, it's just Bryce does a great job at listening, and we really hit a groove about a week. So we practiced for a couple of weeks leading up to this gig the other night, and really we needed more rehearsal time. I was gone out of town for a week, and then Bryce and I were both sick for a week, and it just made it tough. But about a week before this gig, man, we just hit the stride where it just really sounded good. And I thought, shit, man, 2 months from now, 6 months from now, this band is going to be, just 20% better, 30% better than we've ever been before, which says a lot, because we've always strived to be really good live. So
I want to jump in, and I want to ask a question real quick here, because what you're talking about, I think there's less for you to do, which opens you up to think about new things to do and new direction to take the music. And there's also, I think, and John will have to correct me if I'm wrong on this, there's also a change in what Brian has to do, either less or more or whatever, but he gets to make different choices, which for a band that's growing and writing new music, it seems like you guys are adding a whole, like almost a 3-dimensional palette of new things, because you can have Bryce sitting up top and maybe he's playing a line that's, it's the bottom, but he's also taking up a space that you would fill otherwise. And now, with the guitar, you can do anything, but now you have time to maybe think through some of these things, or even have your mind open up to the possibility, because you're not doing 7 jobs at once. You're only doing 5 of them now.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of done. It has done that, but it's also done the opposite of that, in the fact that before I was painting with 3 or 4 crayons or drawing with 3 or 4 crayons, and now I have the whole box. I can pretty much do whatever I want. And, so now if I want to play wah on a solo, I can do that, or I can kick a wah in, or I can kick a vibe in, or I'm still using a multi-rig amp setup. I really can do anything I want to now, within the confines of the song. For Brian, it's almost done the opposite, in the fact that before, when we played, if he wanted to add in 3 extra kick at the end of a measure and do a triplet or something, he could do that, because I wasn't absolutely matching him sometimes. I was doing something similar but different. But now with Bryce's bass is hitting with Brian's kick, so Brian has to kind of sort out, okay, this is what I'm going to do every time, because Bryce is matching me and I'm going to be consistent. So it's made the rhythm section much more consistent. Not that Brian wasn't accurate before, he was, but we were a little wild on things. And now on the newer stuff, we're still playing the old stuff the way it was written in Bryce's end, but the newer stuff, those two are really locked in, and thank God they've really just kind of made created a bed for me to kind of do what I want to do, make noise, and just be creative. And really at this point in our career, especially looking at the next record, that's really what I needed more than anything, was just to have an opportunity to be really creative and see where we could take this.
That's awesome to hear. We often refer to this quote by Alfred Hitchcock where he said that the enemy of cinema is the lack of limitation. And so it seems like as you describe it, you were using limitation in your favor, and then now you're growing your quiver. With Bryce's bass, you're growing your quiver in a way that allows you to capitalize on what you have built based on the limitations that you had. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good analogy. And we're still just a three-piece. There are still limitations on being a three-piece. And the good thing is that I think, and Bryce can speak to this, but I think him watching how I was covering three basses by myself before, now that he's in, he automatically kind of did that. So when I take a solo or I'm playing a solo, instead of it just being the bass underneath, he's got distortion pedals and chorus pedals and doublers. And so he automatically just thickens up and does these things the same way that Brian always has, and to fill space that we want to have space, but to also still let it breathe. So I couldn't be any luckier as a guitar player and as a writer to have both of these guys in the band with me, because they both are very attentive to the song and what we're trying to do with the song and space-wise. So it's great.
That is fantastic. Pete and I often have these discussions when we're listening to trios, especially like the Police, about how much space everybody's taking up, and how the responsibility shifts when the solo happens, because you change up, you have to fill up a little more space. How do you do it tactfully? How do you not betray the song? Things like that. So Bryce, talk about your influences as a bass player that allow you to speak that language.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I've always been drawn to power trios. I mean, I can go back through like every band that I've been a huge fan of. Starting off, Cream was Jack Bruce, Eric Clapton, Ginger Baker. I mean, that was the beginning, really. I mean, Pink Floyd started it, and then I found blues and blues rock, and then went to Cream, and that's where Cream, Rush, even the newer stuff like Primus. I love some Primus, some Les Claypool, all that. And so that's just the music that I naturally gravitated towards, and I like the space, I like the room that it gave the bass player to add, like especially on whenever the jam breaks would happen or solos or whatever, the bass could be kind of busy but still provide that low end, that foundation, but not take away from the song. And so that's what I was always gravitated towards, I mean, and so that kind of stuff, all that stuff kind of influenced me. I've been lucky to play here locally with a bunch of most of the bands I've played in have been trios, with the exception of like a big funk band. So I cut my teeth on playing in a power trio and a jazz fusion trio and all this stuff. And so that gave me enough insight and past to kind of know where I wanted to take it immediately. And, there wasn't like a learning curve to be like, okay, I've played in 6-piece bands and now I'm in a trio. Now what do I do? Do I leave the bass line as it is, or do I get a little bit busier? Do I beef it up with distortion, octaves, whatever? And so, I already naturally had that toolkit available to myself, and that's been huge, I and having the influences like Cream and Rush and all that. I mean, even Led Zeppelin, even though they're a 4-piece, but musically they're a trio, instrumentally wise, I guess, and so all that stuff just, showed me the way, I guess.
If you guys are going to be a power trio, that means someone at some point here pretty quick is going to have a keyboard in front of them, and it seems like that guy is you. So
I've been pushing. I'm totally down to get a keyboard. I'm telling you,
it's going to happen. I mean, look, Geddy Lee.
Yeah. Geddy Lee's my hero all time. So
we have
if I can get a keyboard on stage.
Charles Quinn plays the keys and bass. It depends on the song, and he gets the job done. And boy, you talk about adding layers. That's going to happen, right?
Chris, you down?
I mean, we had discussed that up front. We were like, the conversation was, well, he could play, can he sing any background? Yeah, well, he can sing a little bit. Well, but could he play organ? Yeah. Actually, he can play organ. He could actually play some guitar. That's the things that you look at when you're hiring somebody in whatever situation. You're looking at the resume. He clicked. He checked off all the boxes, so that's great. The other thing is as a blues rock band and as purveyors of things that are vintage and old that we like, we in the past we've always made sure that we didn't want to use tracks, or we didn't want to do this or that. But I don't think that anybody cares anymore. I think they want to see a band play live, and as long as everybody's playing their instruments. I don't know that it's so pensive to not use a organ patch, or Brian's got triggers that he can use. And so when we did add Bryce, we were like, okay, we're up for anything. What we want to do is reproduce the songs that we're making on the album as well as we can live, but then also add some attributes that make them exciting live that's not on the record. So that's kind of the goal.
Yeah, it sounds to me like what you're after is producing a good time, and you've gotten to a place where you've found a co-conspirator who brought a toolbox that makes things interesting. Because correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, if you are to characterize Bryce as a bass player who can do other things, well, that's great. But a bass player with a listening perspective of the other things is really where it opens up opportunities. Would you say?
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better. Stated very well. If you've played drums before and you're a bass player and you're listening to the drummer, you have a different perspective on that. I think Bryce, being someone that started with guitar, played guitar, and that can play little keys, and has a lot of experience playing with jazz guys and orienting, arrangements. He has a good feel for what we're doing and where we want to go. And he, talking about, how we want to space things out. The other thing that I don't want to discount at all is that he also is extremely sensitive to not change our sound, to not look back at the legacy that we've worked at for 10 years. He's very, and again, I'm speaking for him, but he's been very, very cool about, hey man, he didn't come in wanting to change things, and that can be something to worry about too when you add in somebody in and they're super excited and they want to push something in another direction. We've always had a great working relationship, Brian and I have, in that we know what we do. Brian's he handles all the drum stuff. I give him suggestions, but I'm not going to tell him how to do that. He's an amazing arranger, Brian is. And so we all kind of have our things, and Bryce has fit in there really well as being a guy that comes in and plays everything that's already been there, but also be a guy that could play some things or suggest some things that might be creative without, trying to take it somewhere we don't want to go. So
before Jon talks about arranging, because I know he's going to want to hit that, I want to ask Bryce, because I know we'll get past it. It's great that Chris has you there, and he's like, yeah, you know how to listen to everything else. And there's push, and then there's contribute, right? And so
Right.
How comfortable do you feel right now where you're like, I've got my time to contribute more later on, but how are you doing that for yourself where you're like, ooh, I want to say this out loud, but right now I'm going to bite my tongue
Right.
because I'm not earned. Yeah. Where are you at with that process, man?
Yeah, like that was something I was concerned about, because I didn't want to make it feel like I was just, paint by numbers and, just tell me what to do and I'll do it and that's it. But I also didn't want to come in and be like, yeah, I think we should do it this way. And, so I was worried about that. But then, like, I think the first or second rehearsal we got together, we started working on one of the newer tunes. And, there was a section where I thought we could change where we come in with some chord hits on Come For Me. Or no, Cup of Tea. And I felt totally fine suggesting that. And and it was exactly that. It was a suggestion, and Chris took it, and that's how we play it now. And so, just that little change, I felt totally comfortable suggesting it, and I didn't feel like I was getting browbeat or like, oh, but when I left the room, they were like, can you believe this guy suggested that? I never felt like that. I mean, it's really been the transition to auditioning, I guess, essentially, to where we are now has been completely smooth and natural. It's just, they've been super great guys to work with, and what more can you ask?
Yeah. I remember that meeting. I remember the door shut, and it was like,
Yeah.
talk box, fucking talk box.
It's as a guy that's kind of done it all by myself for 12, 13 years now. I mean, I hadn't played. Brian's had a couple situations where he's played with other people, but I haven't. And so, obviously you guys can tell Bryce is a sweetheart. He's not going to come in and propose something, first of all, that he didn't think through. And second of all, that, he's going to try to shove down anybody's throat. So I welcomed it. And it's great. And, at the end of the day, I am the Jimmy Page guy. I want to produce stuff. I want to have my hands on the final product because I'm writing the songs. And I think both the guys are cool with that. But man, you'd be an idiot not to listen to suggestions. I mean, my wife has suggestions on stuff, and she didn't know anything about music. I think once you start going, I know it all, and this is exactly how it's going to be, I'm not going to listen to anybody else. That's a pretty poor way to be a human being, in my opinion. So
I agree. I mean, it's got to be severely limiting to think like that. Be like, I've got the answer. I mean, how can you? How are you going to grow? I mean, I learn by criticism. I learn by suggestion, and to me, that's the most important thing.
The sad thing is Brian's not here, so we can talk about it. Brian always has the right suggestion, but he doesn't. He never says it, so he holds it. He holds it to the chest. So no.
Well, a lot of that is consideration. I mean, all the things that you guys are describing are great, but when we all have ideas, they're not always good.
Absolutely.
And we have to be willing to say, well, let's let them try it. Let's give it a shot and see how we all feel about it. And then whoever suggested it, if you're in that kind of a relationship that it really sounds like you guys are in terms of collaboration, you have the wherewithal to say, here's a suggestion. If it doesn't work out, great, we'll move on to another one.
Absolutely.
So, if that's one of the things that you were looking for in a new member of the band, Chris, bassist or not, just bringing somebody into the fold and then finding somebody that you could be a collaborator with, who was considerate to the vision, understood it enough, but then had creative enough suggestions that made you go, oh yeah, all right, think about that. When you think about adding a member, was that something that was conscious in your thought, or were you just listening to the label and thinking, well, it'd probably be great if we could find somebody who could reproduce what I've been doing on the record to free me up to allow for a better show?
We've had that thought that that would be good to have somebody else to fill in stuff. It was kind of twofold in that we didn't want to take away from, I think Brian and I both had a little bit of concern that we would lose the statement that says, hey, these two guys sound like four. I mean, now, because now we're three people. Hopefully now we sound like 5 or 6 with 3 people, but we knew we would lose that. So that was kind of a consideration. But to be honest, 50% of what we were looking for in a bass player or an additional person was half of that is a skilled musician that I could say, and Bryce does this. I can say something to him and he'll play exactly what I just asked him to play. He at least is able to do that. Or I can play something on guitar and he just looks at me and calculates it, then he plays it. And we might work it for a second or whatever, but he can do that. So that's 50% of the thing. The other 50% of it is, can you be on the road with us for 6 weeks? Can you travel to Europe with us and be stuck in an airport for 6 hours? and us be around each other and not absolutely drive each other crazy. Because Brian and I have had a 20-year-long relationship. We've known each other, and I'm sure we get on each other's nerves sometimes traveling. We're way different on a lot of subjects. We do respect each other, and we've been able to do that. We've been able to be in a band for 10 years, and we're able to travel. And Bryce has a personality and a disposition that he fits in the band very well. He has the same kind of sense of humor. He's easygoing. And that was one of the things whenever I talked to a couple of the guys he played with before we reached out to him, I talked to a mutual friend that's really close to us. And he goes, I don't know if Bryce would work out for you guys on the bass playing, if that's what you want or not, 2-piece, 3-piece, whatever. But I will say, if you can't get along with Bryce, you can't get along with anybody, because he is very easygoing, and that's a big part of it, man. That's I would take him with him being 20% less proficient on bass or somebody else, rather than somebody that's just a killer bass player that, man, is going to be on the airplane and just complaining or doesn't like it that he's traveling with somebody. And now we're at the point where we're playing a lot of festivals, and we did 60,000 miles last year in 9 countries. So to be able to get along with somebody, and Bryce is hilarious. He fits in the band great. It's a good,
that goes a long way.
It does, man. It really does. And
because for me, Pete smells bad, but he's pretty funny.
Hey,
if you got to pick between the two, right? You want the humor.
Right.
Yeah. No, but that kind of chemistry. I'm going to ask you both the same question, but I'm going to ask Bryce first, because like at this point, Pete and I have worked together on a number of things, and we have a dynamic that would allow us to go on the road together and know that all of our foibles kind of fit each other. And I know that whatever he's doing may be insufferable to somebody else, but I can take it. And vice versa. I know whatever I do that drives people crazy, Pete can even point it out. Like, hey, here's that thing you do. Like, hey, man, you leave the windows up and turn the car on and turn the air conditioner on, whatever. If we bring a third person into the mix, it's going to take a little while where it's, Pete and I are not just 2/3 of the equation. It's more like we're 90% of the equation, and we're allowing this person their 10% and working up. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So at this point, how is that dynamic? And I'll ask Bryce first. Where do you think you are in terms of being like a full third member of the band? Where do you see your position? And it's not, if you said like right now I'm at 10%, but it feels good or whatever. Where do you think you are in terms of band chemistry?
Oh, I mean, it's still relatively new. I mean, I think Chris reached out beginning of December, maybe ish, December 6th, maybe. So, I mean, we're a month, 6 weeks into it.
That is super new.
Yeah, it's still really fresh, but it feels great. I mean, I've done a lot of this stuff, played with new bands, picked up new bands a lot. And, and you can always kind of tell usually right away how it's going to end up a little bit. You can always kind of feel that dynamic out a little bit. And
you can certainly feel when it's wrong, right?
Exactly. And I ran into Chris, and we had talked before in the past few years, but nothing beyond like, dude, you sound amazing, your band's awesome, yada yada, whatever. And we went to lunch, and it was like we had known each other for years, like we've talked multiple times. There was no awkward stuff. We went to a show in Nashville middle December, and it's like an 8-hour ride down and back. And I was like, this might be kind of weird. I don't really know Chris that well. And it was super easy. It was great. I had a great time. It was just natural, and I think that carries over into the band performance as well. Everything just feels natural. So like, I really don't see, I feel like maybe we're halfway there, I guess, to answer your question. I'm not fully in there yet. I'm still trying to earn my position, I don't want to take anything for granted, but I think it's gonna be great. I get along with both of them great, and I just see nothing but roses in the future, man.
Chris, what do you say about that very diplomatic answer?
I think one thing to consider in having this discussion is that Bryce has kind of been auditioning for us for 10 years. In the fact that he's played with friends of ours, close friends of ours, for 10 years. Like, he's always been around town. If it was somebody from out of town, you don't have that background on them where you go, well, I heard the story where they got mad, they threw the bass and walked out, or they threw a fit, or the wife was on drugs, or they got something crazy. So, a couple really close friends of mine that I really respect, Bryce has played with for years, and they had nothing but great things to say. They were super excited about him playing in the Cold Stairs. But you have a work history there, and you have friends, and you guys know, I'm sure Pete, you may have a friend that has some quirks that you guys, as a three-piece in a car, you go, oh, I know when he does this, it's gonna aggravate somebody else. But we just haven't ran across that yet. I instantly, when Bryce and I had lunch, I was like, yeah, this is going to work out. It's going to be fine, because we have similar backgrounds. We come from the same area. We like similar music. The test will be, as far as longevity of Bryce and how he does in the band, will be, there's a lot of absolutely amazing things that we've done. We're playing in Europe. We have hundreds of thousands of fans. We have all these things, but there's also getting in a van in Paris and driving after 2 hours sleep and driving 8 hours, getting to the next gig, and having to load most of the gear ourselves. I can't speak. I have a gut feeling about how Bryce is going to be on that, but I can't speak to how he'll be as far as that stuff goes, nor could anybody, until we get out and start doing those things. So, but man, I've told Brian and I've had this discussion. I just don't think anybody else would be right. Even after the first time we got together, I was like, yeah, it just feels right. I'm a gut guy. I go by my gut. I have a good instinct on people and how people are. And, I just felt it was a good fit, in so much that I love our fans and I want our fans to be happy, but I didn't really give a shit what anybody else thought, because, I write the songs for this band. I put in tens of thousands of hours of work in the last 10 years, and creatively right now, I needed to have another partner in the band with Brian and I to help push this forward. And, Bryce was that guy. So I was like, I know some people are going to say, well, they're not a two-piece, it's not the same, but, I'm the one cooking the meal. If you want to come in the kitchen and help me cook, then that's one thing. But a lot of people like to stand in the lobby and bitch about the
grits,
bitch about the grits, and they're not in their seasoning. So yeah. I think it's going to be great, man. I think it's going to be fine. I have absolutely zero negative energy about it whatsoever.
That is fantastic. That is really great to hear. I think if our listeners are, in tune to what I'm hearing the same way, it's really just the relationship started off right. You had, like you said, similar backgrounds. Everybody came to the situation with the appropriate respect for the work and respect for work in general. Like you said, there are those tests on the road that happen, and until those tests are in front of you, you see how people perform. But short of seeing somebody perform in the test, you can detect the aptitude for the performance.
Yeah.
So that's really great
absolutely.
to hear, man. It's nice that you guys have found each other for those of us who love the Cold Stairs. It's nice to hear that what you love about the Cold Stairs isn't going to change. It's, if anything, going to just free up room for improvement and room for continuing collaboration and more more arrows in the quiver.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's great that
Absolutely.
Bryce was a fan of the band. And it's like, if you're a fan of the Cold Stairs, it's like another fan of the Cold Stairs joining the band. Bryce and Bryce's brother Tyler, that I'm close with also, and those guys have supported us since day one. So it's not like we went and hired somebody from Maroon 5. We hired we hired a friend and a fan to help us out moving forward. So
Yeah. Aware of
Yep.
the chemistry, aware of, the process, all that stuff.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, terrific. So Bryce, if you if you go on the road and you find yourself in these situations where musically you're recreating but adding your own spice,
Yeah.
what are some of the things that you reach into in your toolkit? Like, what are the things that technically you lean on that says this is right for this musical situation?
Like that. I mean, it all just depends on the song. I mean, I as a bass player, I serve the song. I mean, usually it's not something that is. This is probably more another diplomatic.
Hold on, that's the
answer.
soundbite that I want all the bass players across the world, and most of them, the good ones all know that, but
Yeah.
that's the soundbite that all the bass players out there need to hear.
I mean, unless it's a bass written tune, that's the bass is driving it. It's you follow whatever's given to me. I want to make the song sound the best it can, and if that's a super busy bass line with 16th notes and ghost notes all over it, slapping all that stuff.
Yeah,
then great. Then that's what the song deserves. But
Rocco did it.
yeah, exactly. If Rocco is king, so if whatever Tower of Power does, I'm down. So but really, it's just play to the song. I want to serve the song number one. And then Chris second and Brian third, and then my own ego fourth, or whatever, however you want to slice that. But I just want to make the song the best it can sound, and then make the band sound the best they can sound. And that's after that. Whatever else is just great. I guess
That's a great set of priorities.
Yeah, that's what I try to do. I mean, I don't know.
Man, it's kind of like any other relationship, like a marriage or anything else, or a friendship or anything else. I think if you set out to consider everybody else's feelings and put everybody in front of you, and everybody's doing that, I mean, how great is that? How can't get any better than that? So, I think we all try to do that. So,
Totally.
Yeah, I think we all can relate to that too, musically or not. I mean, I would say, Pete and I don't keep score in our friendship because he's probably winning. And if I'm doing it right, he would say, "No, man, I think you're the one winning."
right.
There you go.
Right.
See,
when you're doing it right.
That's all it's about, man.
Yeah. So now that you have this ability to expand musically, and you can give a little more of some of the different directions that you've wanted to explore, what do you think this opens up for your music? What do you think this opens up for your fan base? Where do you want to go with it?
Well, I think we've made every record that we can make as a two-piece.
Oh, right.
I think Heavy Shoes is a great hard rock record from top to bottom. Ways was a record where I really tried to add elements of acoustic stuff and blues stuff and split it up. And, the EP stuff that we did all kind of had its thing. Now with Bryce in there and with me just being able to write really anything that I want to write, that's, I've been having this discussion with myself for the last couple of days and with the guys a little bit yesterday as well. Is do we want to go in the studio and make a Cream record? Do we want to go in the studio and make an updated version of, our favorite band or whatever else? And I've always enjoyed going, okay, what would Zeppelin do at this point, or whatever. It's just things to creatively spark me, because my best Zeppelin song or my best Cream song or whatever doesn't come out and sound like that anyway. But all emulation of our heroes. But really,
Yeah.
I mean, really, we could do. And the other thing is, Brian and I have become very proficient in the studio in the last couple of years. We both have studios in our home. Bryce has a studio at his place. We all have the ability to record, and Brian and I have produced all the Cold Stairs albums up to this point, and so we have a confidence that really we could go in and do anything we want to. So I think the new record is going to be a surprise to people because it's going to be very different from the other records that we've made, just because we've made 3 records that have a lot of similarities.
Yeah. Well, okay. Pete, let me ask you a question as a let's say you're I would classify Pete as a campfire guitar player.
That's right.
It's great to pull it out at the campfire and
Yeah.
and create a good time. When you listen to Chris, what about Cold Stairs music? And man, I wish Brad was on here so I could ask him this question
Yeah,
too.
Brad, come on, get in here.
Yeah. What about the music? What about Chris's playing speaks to you?
Honestly, the first thing that jumps into mind, and depending on the song and everything, is Chris's passion and his inclusion of gospel within the rock vibe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that was a thing for a while. And look, there are all kinds of great genres, and then there's stacked genres from different eras. But that gospel stuff, then I'll just put Ray Charles at the front of that, just like saying rock and roll and gospel can be pairs, right? And then just all the great stuff that came out of Motown, all that stuff. I hear that, and I long for that in modern music. I'm really critical of modern music a lot because it's formulaic and like we know this will sell, and then there's trap is just not very interesting. Chris takes a risk and puts gospel in there, and that hooks me for all of the rest of it. Like that's just a tasty piece of tuna I cannot let go, and I want it, and then I'm along for the ride.
Yeah. Okay. Chris, is that a risk or is that you just speaking in your natural voice?
I think it's absolutely a risk in today's environment to be vocal about that. I'm very blessed in the fact that I've been able to do that, and I've had so many of our fans that don't believe the way that I do to say, "Hey, man, I really respect you for that," and also because it never feels like you're trying to push that down my throat. It's just your perspective. And I love a lot of culture stuff, man. I love Native American stuff. I love so many different cultures that are different than I am and have an immense amount of respect for a lot of that stuff, even though it's different than I am. But anytime somebody's passionate about something and honest about something, I think it's beautiful. And so, without going too deep in it, I've just had life experiences that have kind of built a faith around, my beliefs. And, my wife's always getting on me. She's always like, "Well, you're always killing somebody in one of your songs. Somebody's always your wife, the woman's dying or somebody's, but that comes from my love of early country and Johnny Cash and early blues and Son House and Willie Johnson and a lot of those guys that I honestly grew up listening to and loving that I would hear on an album. I could put on an album and get lost in a song visually. Long Black Veil, Johnny Cash did Long Black Veil, and you see the story of this person that is killed and it wasn't their fault, or or there's a relationship and somebody was hurt or murdered or brokenhearted or whatever else, and visually that. And then on another song, I'd hear somebody singing about what God meant to them, and those things, for them to be on the same record, really felt to me honest, because it seemed like real life. Where when you saw Jimmy Baker and Tammy Faye on television. Obviously that felt fake. So I really was attracted to people that had an element, and I don't know why. I don't know why that changed. Ben Harper is great about having gospel elements in his songs. There's a lot of artists that I wouldn't say there's a lot of artists. There's a few artists still today that still kind of do that, and I have a little bit of an inclusion for that, just because, first of all, I feel like giving back. I just feel like I'm very blessed to be playing in this band, for us to be this successful and this long, and I feel like it's a good memento to have a song that puts a little bit of faith in there every now and then, because without faith, I wouldn't be here. So,
Bryce.
Hey, Chris.
What's up, Brad?
What's up, man?
How are you, man?
I'm doing good. You look good. The two new songs I saw the clips of from Boca sound amazing.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Those are good. Bryce, you look awesome up there.
Hey, thanks, man.
You balance
That's
out
what
the
I do.
stage. You bring the low end. Good to meet you, too.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
Terrific.
Yeah.
All right, Brad.
Where'd everybody go?
I wished for you to be here, and then Pete, of course, quietly put his fingers to work. But I asked for you to be here because really what I wanted to know was, as a guitar player, what Chris's influence meant to you and what excites you about his playing and his songwriting.
Oh, so I would say that when I first ran into the Cold Stairs, so this is like 10 years ago, and I heard Cannonball first from somebody's couch, and I thought, that dude writes the music that's in my head. Like, literally, that's what I thought. And then, as the kind of the journey went on and the albums went on and whatever else, he continued to write the songs that were in my head, which was cool. And I finally became friends with Chris and Brian probably around Mountain Time, just before Mountain Time, and they continued to write the songs that were in my head. It was weird and creepy, but it was what it was. And
go into a little more detail about that. What's in your head that what really speaks to you?
There's a simplicity to his songs. They're like not trying to be too much. They're just there's like an essence to them, and and maybe that comes from being a two-piece. There's a beat, and there's a guitar, and there's singing, right? And the lyrics are not trying to be too much. They are what they are, for the most part.
Right to the chase, yeah.
Right to the chase. They're clear. It's just the right music. I could listen to them. I could listen to their whole discography on a drive from here to Reno and not get tired of it and not want to pull over, and just super easy to listen to.
I want our viewers to know that Brad lives a long damn way from Reno.
I do live a long damn way from Reno.
That's saying a lot.
That's true. Around when the pandemic began, I took a little bit more interest in learning to play guitar and stuff, because the comedy thing wasn't going to happen. And Chris was super helpful with a couple of lessons. Brian helped me figure out how to record myself, and how to use Reaper and produce music and stuff. And I wish I could do it 24/7, because I've got lots of ideas that are backlogged and things to do. As it turns out, I don't have a lot of time to sit and do that. But when I do, I created some stuff I like, and one day I'd like to bring it to stage. One day.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Chris, would you say Brad tells jokes like a guitar player? No, I'm just kidding.
No one tells a joke like Brad does. He's as unique in his joke as we are with the band. I love that.
So hearing this feedback from what I would say is not just a fan, but a music fan and a knowledgeable music fan. What does it do for your for your work and for the justification of kind of what you're putting out there?
I see Brad as every man. Like he's like a guy that is I think a lot of our fans have a commonality that they are working class, lovers of music. It's not what we're not doing cork sniffer music. We're not doing stuff that's, and it's kind of what he said about the lyrics. We're trying to trying to tell a story that everybody can relate to, trying to, as a band, have a work ethic that everybody can relate to. And I honestly, whenever I think about our fans, and we get to meet so many of our fans out on the road, and we have fans like Brad asked for a little help on guitar. I've had people that ask for help on guitars. People know I'm a guitar lover, and people do the same with Brian. And we try to be as accommodating as we possibly can with all that stuff, because I honestly feel like we're in the same boat as our fans. We have it's not like it's, I don't know, it's just it feels like we're in this together, and it feels, whenever I'm telling a story or I'm singing a song about something, I more times than not feel like this is something that relates to everybody. Everybody has to deal with this sooner or later. Everybody has to deal with death. Everybody has to deal with faith, or with overcoming something, or love, or not necessarily being hung, but we can all relate to having that feeling of being strung up for something you didn't mean to do, or didn't, I don't know. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
I think what I'm hearing is that, when you said that one of the things that attracted you to Bryce was that you just got the feel for him as a human being. Like, hey man, when it's time to shore up and get it done, he'd be the kind of guy to roll his sleeves up. And Brad is certainly the kind of guy to roll his sleeves up. And so
Oh yeah.
Well,
if there's a
today, but
commonality,
yeah,
well,
got you,
yeah,
John.
figuratively
I see your
speaking.
point.
Yeah. I want to go back to the gospel influence. Bryce, as a bass player, is the gospel influence, is it more like a melodic musical tool, or is it a thickening agent?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I'd say a little bit of both. I mean, I feel like all I'm dropping is diplomatic answers, but it's true. I mean, it's a little bit of both. I mean, like, to me, I mean, that's got its own kind of feel. So it can be a little bit melodic on its own, but it can also, it can just give that real rootsy, home down, like really build everything up type feel. So like a thickening agent, absolutely. All that.
And it's not like
yeah.
it's not like our gospel stuff is traditionally Ray Charles type stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
the most gospel song we probably have is Jesus Brother James, and that's whenever I wrote the guitar riff, I was trying to emulate something off of AC/DC, Flick of the Switch. So we're putting in those overtones lyrically, but not necessarily musically as much.
Yeah.
I'd say the other song from your catalog that's very overt, "Child of God."
Oh yeah.
What a great song. And you know what? It's like you don't have to be a God person to listen to that and get the point of it.
Absolutely.
It's about humanity. It's not not so much about the Lord and Savior. I mean, that I think is what Chris does lyrically with these topics. That's really amazing. If you're not closed off to it, and there's a lot of people that are closed off to it just because they are, right? If you're not closed off to it, it's very accessible.
Yeah, and I mean, I wrote that song whenever I was going through chemotherapy and watching people around me die. I'd go into Vanderbilt, and every week there'd be somebody else that I had seen taking chemo that was gone. And in every walk of life, every background, every religion, every race, every whatever else. And I just thought at the time, I thought, none of us are immune to death, and we're all cut from the same cloth, man. No matter who you are. So that song, has moonshiners in it, and it has good people and bad people and everything else. The point is that we're all human, and we all come from somewhere, man. You can call it God, you can call it, whatever you want to, but we're all the same. So that was the point of that song. So yeah,
I want to get us to start to wrap things up here. I do want to say this too. If you're unsure about gospel being part of a song, you're going to have to deal with a lot of songs. Most songs in history some kind of religious aspect. I mean, you don't get to like Bach, which means you don't get to get married to the standard, wedding march. I mean, we got to get over some of that stuff. You don't have to be religious to appreciate that there is an inspiration, whether it's the universe or, your karma or whatever it is. Get over that shit. The other thing I want to say is this is my secret ask. This is what I've been waiting to ask the whole time. Chris, I'm waiting to hear some horns in there with a little bit of gospel twinge. You got a little bit of that horn action in there. And, John and I we just did a show recently with Dr. Robert Greenberg, who, like us, loves Mick Gillette. And you put horns in, and you got a big sounding band. You put horns in there, you can blow the back of the room off. And so we like that kind of thing. So I'm always proposing horns, and I know that makes Brad laugh. I want to start to wrap things up. Brad, I'm going to give you the last word, and then I'm going to get out of the way and let John wrap the rest of the show up. So, Brad, your last word.
So I'm going to make the biggest pitch I can for the Cold Stares on the Break It Down show, which is, if you're a fan of the Break It Down show, if you're a fan of the authenticity of Pete and John, you are going to love the Cold Stares and the authenticity of Chris, Brian, and Bryce. Best pitch I can make.
Yeah, there aren't words after that, except you should go to the website, coldstairs.com, and consume all of it, just like Brad said. The website is on a link right there on the screen and below. So dig it. And if you're watching the show as a fan of the show, but not yet a fan of the Cold Stares, it's Brad gave the biggest endorsement, and it's all true. Hey man, love you guys. Thank you very much for everything, being on the show, and of course for the music and for the inspiration.
Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much.